Hello everyone, welcome to Azad Revenge Stories channel. Table 7 needs their check, Margot. And where are the drinks for table 12? They've been waiting for 10 minutes. My stepmother's voice cut through the noise of the packed restaurant. I could feel my hands shaking as I balanced the heavy oven tray, my back screaming from being on my feet since 7:00 a.m. It was already 900 p.m. "I'm coming, Diane," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady as sweat dripped down my temple. The weight of the tray made my arms tremble, but I couldn't afford to drop anything. Not again. Last time, she'd made me pay for every broken plate from my already meager paycheck. "Don't use that tone with me," she hissed, grabbing my arm so suddenly that the plates shifted dangerously. "And it's Mrs. Blackwood when we're at work. You think because you're my husband's daughter, you get special treatment. You live under my roof for free. You earn your keep." I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. Behind Diane, through the kitchen doors, I could see my stepsister Vanessa scrolling through her phone, perched comfortably on a stool while eating food from the kitchen. She caught my eye and smirked, wiggling her perfectly manicured fingers at me in a mocking wave. I was 17 years old, working 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, making less than half of minimum wage, all while trying to finish high school. And there was Vanessa, same age as me, who'd never worked a day in her life. "I need to deliver these before they get cold," I said quietly, pulling away. Diane's eyes narrowed. "When you're done, the bathroom needs cleaning." Someone got sick in the second stall. Her diamond earrings caught the light as she turned away, her designer heels clicking against the tile floor as she headed back to her office. "And don't think about leaving until every table is cleared. I don't care if it's midnight." My eyes burned with unshed tears as I delivered the food, plastering on a fake smile that made my cheeks hurt. "Is everything okay, honey?" An older woman at the table looked up at me with concern. "You look exhausted." "I'm fine, thank you," I lied, the rehearsed response automatic after all this time. "Enjoy your meal. Can I get you anything else?" "My name is Margaret Palmer. I'm 19 now, but when this all started, I was 17, a junior in high school who should have been worrying about prom and college applications, not varicose veins and wage theft." Before I go any further with my story, could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments where you're watching from? I've carried this weight for so long, and knowing my story has reached people, that someone is listening means more than you know. 2 years ago, my life changed completely. My parents had been divorced for nearly a decade, with me splitting time between them. My mom worked as a nurse, often taking night shifts, while my dad had always been climbing the corporate ladder at a popular restaurant chain. Then my mom got an opportunity to work with Doctors Without Borders, her dream job. We talked for weeks about whether I should go with her or stay with Dad to finish high school without disruption. "It's only for a year and a half," she said, though I could see the guilt in her eyes. "And your father needs to step up. He's been the fun weekend dad for too long." So I moved in with my father full-time. What I didn't know was that he'd been dating his boss, Diane Blackwood, the regional manager, who'd recently bought the entire chain of restaurants from the previous owner. Within 3 months of me moving in, they were married. And that's when everything changed. The night of the incident I described, that was just an average Tuesday. Diane had decided early on that since I was living rent-free in her house, I needed to earn my keep. It started with helping out at one of her restaurants on weekends. Then it became after school. Then it was every day. By the time I realized what was happening, I was essentially working full-time while trying to maintain my grades. My father, he was useless. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd say things like, "Diane's teaching you responsibility." Or, "Do you know how lucky you are to be getting restaurant experience at your age?" All while Vanessa, Diane's daughter, was being showered with everything a teenager could want. That night, after cleaning the bathroom where someone had indeed been violently ill, I dragged myself home at 12:30 a.m. I had a calculus test the next morning that I hadn't been able to study for. As I crept through the dark house toward my bedroom, which was actually the converted storage room next to the laundry, I heard laughter from the kitchen. I couldn't help myself. I peeked around the corner. There was my dad, Diane, and Vanessa eating ice cream sundaes around the island. Vanessa was showing off shopping bags from her afternoon at the mall. My dad was laughing at something she said, his arm around her shoulder in a way he'd never done with me. "Did we wake you, honey?" he asked when he spotted me, as if I'd been sleeping rather than scrubbing toilets at Diane's restaurant. "No, I just got home from work," I said, my uniform still stained with food and cleaning chemicals. "Oh," he said, looking momentarily uncomfortable before Vanessa distracted him by pulling out a new phone. "Look what Mom got me today. Isn't it amazing?" "It certainly is," my dad said, his momentary guilt forgotten as he admired the latest model that must have cost close to $1,000. "Marat," Diane said, not even looking at me. "There's a load of towels in the dryer. Fold them before you go to bed." I stood there, 17 years old, exhausted to my bones, watching my father choose his new family over me, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't just anger or hurt. It was clarity. This woman had systematically taken over my life, and no one was going to save me. Not my dad. Not my mom, who was across the world. No one. If I was going to survive this, I needed to be smart. That night, as I folded the towels with hands raw from industrial cleaning products, I made a decision. I would document everything. Every shift I worked, every labor law Diane broke, every health code violation I witnessed. I wouldn't just endure, I would gather evidence. The next day at school, I approached Mr. Harrington, my business studies teacher. Hypothetically, I asked after class, if someone under 18 was working more than the legal hours and getting paid less than minimum wage, what could they do about it? Mr. Harrington studied me for a long moment. "Hypothetically, that would be a serious violation of labor laws. Is this for a project, Margaret?" "Yes," I lied. "A project." He seemed unconvinced, but handed me some printouts about labor laws in our state. "Documentation is key in these situations," he said carefully. "Times, dates, witnesses, any written communication, and remember most states have whistleblower protections." That conversation was the beginning. I started keeping meticulous records using a small notebook I hid in my sock during shifts. I noted every time Diane made me work past midnight on a school night, every time she paid me in cash below minimum wage, every safety hazard she ignored. When summer came, things got worse. Without school as a buffer, Diane scheduled me for double shifts, 6:00 in the morning until 10 at night, sometimes later. Meanwhile, Vanessa spent her days by the pool, shopping with friends, or lounging around the house. On Vanessa's birthday in July, Diane and my dad gave her a car, a brand new compact SUV with all the upgrades. There was a huge party at our house with Diane's friends and business associates, all bringing gifts. "Margaret will be serving drinks and appetizers," Diane announced when the first guests arrived. She handed me a black uniform. "Change into this." "But I'm family too," I said, the words sounding pathetic even to my own ears. "Don't be ridiculous," she said, her voice low so only I could hear. "These are important business contacts. I need someone reliable handling the food, not sitting around enjoying themselves." So I served at my stepsister's birthday party in my own home, watching as Vanessa unwrapped expensive gifts as my father beamed with pride at his daughter as if I wasn't even there. That night, after everyone left and I was cleaning up the kitchen alone, I overheard Diane and my dad talking in the living room. "We need to discuss Margaret's college situation. My dad was saying she'll be applying this fall, and we should think about how much we can contribute." My heart lifted slightly. At least he was thinking about my future. "What college situation?" Diane laughed. "Richard, be realistic. Margaret isn't college material. She's barely maintaining C's with all the hours she misses. Besides, she's already got a job at the restaurant. She should be grateful most kids her age can't find decent work." "But we are paying for Vanessa's college," my dad said, though his voice lacked conviction. "That's different. Vanessa has maintained a 4.0 GPA. She deserves it, and she's my daughter. I've been saving for her education since she was born." There was a long pause before my father responded, and I held my breath. "You're right," he finally said. "Margaret can take some community college classes if she really wants to. She can pay for it herself. It'll teach her responsibility. I stood frozen in the kitchen, a half-cleaned plate in my hand. That was the moment I knew. My father had completely abandoned me. I was on my own. But I wasn't just hurt or angry anymore. I was determined. The next day, I expanded my documentation. I started taking photos with a disposable camera I'd bought, expired food being served, unsafe storage practices, a schedule showing my illegal hours. I listened carefully when Diane talked to her managers about creative accounting and how to handle cash to minimize tax exposure. I made friends with the other employees, mostly immigrants who were afraid to speak up about their own exploitation. They began to trust me, sharing stories of wage theft and mistreatment. Carlos, the dishwasher who'd been working there for 5 years, showed me how Diane had never given him the raises she promised. Elir, a server in her 40s, confided that her overtime hours were never recorded properly. "Why doesn't anyone report her?" I asked Elir one night as we folded napkins after closing. "Report her to who? She owns all 5 restaurants in the area. Where would we work? Besides, many here don't have papers. She knows that. She uses it." By December of my senior year, I had filled 3 notebooks with detailed accounts of violations. I had photos, copies of altered timesheets, recordings of Diane instructing managers to change records. I kept everything in a lockbox hidden in a vent in my small bedroom. My plan was taking shape, but I needed to be patient. I couldn't act until I turned 18 and had somewhere else to go. If Diane discovered what I was doing while I still lived under her roof, I'd have nowhere to run. The turning point came in February, just 2 months before my 18th birthday. Vanessa had been accepted to an expensive private university, and Diane threw another lavish party to celebrate. Once again, I was forced to serve while the guests congratulated my stepsister. As I was bringing out a tray of champagne, I'd overheard Diane talking to one of her business friends. "Of course, we are paying for everything. Tuition, housing, spending money, nothing but the best for my girl. That's so generous." The woman said, "College costs are insane these days." "Well, the restaurants are doing very well." Diane laughed. "And Richard's daughter has been a godsend. Free labor. She works like a horse and doesn't complain. I've saved a fortune on staffing costs this year alone." The champagne glasses on my tray clinked as my hands began to shake. Free labor. That's all I was to her. A cost-saving measure. Something to exploit. I managed to set down the tray before I dropped it, then fled to the bathroom where I locked myself in a stall and finally let myself cry. Years of exhaustion, humiliation, and rage poured out of me. I covered my mouth to muffle the sobs, not wanting to give Diane the satisfaction of knowing she'd broken me. When I finally calmed down, I looked at my reflection in the mirror, pale with dark circles under my eyes, looking years older than I was. My hands were rough and chapped from chemicals. My posture stooped from carrying heavy trays. 2 more months, I whispered to myself. Just 2 more months. I used my meager savings to secure a small studio apartment across town, paying the deposit in advance so it would be ready on my 18th birthday. I applied for scholarships in secret using the school's computers and listing my mother's overseas address. I arranged to pick up extra shifts at a different restaurant chain where Diane had no influence. The pieces were falling into place, but I still had to maintain the facade. Every day I went to school, then to work, then home to sleep for a few hours before starting again. I endured Diane's criticism, Vanessa's taunts, and my father's indifference. I kept my head down and continued gathering evidence. On the night before my 18th birthday, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would change everything. The folders of evidence were packed in my backpack along with the few possessions I cared about. I'd already moved most of my things to the new apartment in small batches, so no one would notice. I lay awake, heart pounding, rehearsing what I would say to the Labor Department, the health inspectors, the tax authorities. I had appointments scheduled with all 3 the next day, my birthday gift to myself. As I finally drifted off, I thought about Diane's face when she realized what was coming. When she understood that the quiet, obedient stepdaughter she'd exploited for 2 years had been watching, documenting, and planning all along. She thought I was powerless. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The morning of my 18th birthday dawned bright and clear. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I didn't feel that heavy dread in my stomach. Today, I was legally an adult. Today, everything would change. I got ready for school as usual, wearing the same worn jeans and faded t-shirt I always did. When I came downstairs, there was no acknowledgement of my birthday. My dad sat at the kitchen island scrolling through his phone while drinking coffee. "Morning," I said, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. He grunted in response, not looking up. "It's my birthday today," I added just to see what would happen. His head jerked up, eyes widening slightly. "Oh, right. Happy birthday, Margaret." He patted his pockets awkwardly. "I didn't get you anything yet, but maybe this weekend we could. Don't worry about it." I cut him off. "I've got plans after school anyway." "Plans?" He looked genuinely surprised, as if he couldn't imagine me having a life outside of school in the restaurant. "Yeah, with friends." It wasn't exactly a lie. Mr. Harrington had agreed to come with me to the Labor Department as a witness and support person. He'd been quietly helping me prepare my case for months. "Well, Diane needs you at the restaurant by 4, my dad said, already looking back at his phone. "They're short-staffed tonight." I just smiled. "I'll keep that in mind." He didn't notice the change in my tone, the straightness of my spine, or the lack of fear in my eyes. He didn't know me well enough anymore to recognize those things. School passed in a blur. During lunch, I received a text from my mom wishing me happy birthday from a remote clinic somewhere in Africa. She'd sent a small money transfer too. Not much, but enough to help with my first month's rent. Unlike my father, she hadn't forgotten. After school, Mr. Harrington met me in the parking lot. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as we walked to his car. "Once you set this in motion, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said, clutching my backpack with all my evidence. "I've been living with no way back for 2 years." Our first stop was the State Labor Department. I'd made an appointment with an investigator named Ms. Patel, who specialized in wage theft and child labor violations. Her office was small but neat, with stacks of files organized on every surface. "So," she said, after we'd made introductions, "you believe you have evidence of labor law violations?" I unzipped my backpack and pulled out the first folder. "I don't believe. I know." I placed it on her desk. "These are my timesheets for the past 2 years, showing I regularly worked over 40 hours per week while I was a minor, including overnight shifts on school nights." Her eyebrows rose slightly as she flipped through the pages. "These other folders contain pay stubs showing I was paid below minimum wage with no overtime compensation. I also have statements from 15 other employees experiencing similar treatment, though many were afraid to put their names on record." Miss Patel looked increasingly concerned as I continued presenting evidence, photographs of altered time cards, recordings of managers discussing how to avoid paying overtime, notes from meetings where Diane explicitly instructed staff to lie to any potential inspectors. "This is extensive," Miss Patel said finally. "You've been documenting all of this while working there." "Yes," I said, "for 2 years, and you're just turning 18 today." Her voice softened slightly. "This must have been difficult for you." I swallowed hard, unprepared for the simple kindness in her tone. "It was. But that's not all." I explained about Diane being my stepmother, about being forced to work while living in her home, about the desperate treatment between me and Vanessa. "The owner of these restaurants is your father's wife, Ms. Patel clarified, making notes. "Yes, Diane Blackwood. She owns all 5 locations in the Midtown restaurant group." Mr. Harrington spoke up. "Then Margaret has been an exceptional student despite working hours that would exhaust most adults. I witnessed her falling asleep in class from exhaustion and coming to school ill because she wasn't allowed to miss shifts." Miss Patel nodded grimly. "We take these violations very seriously, especially when they involve minors." She started filling out forms. "This will trigger an immediate investigation. Based on what you've shown me, there will likely be significant penalties." Our next stop was the health department. The health inspector, Mr. Garza, was equally alarmed by my documentation of expired food being served, improper food storage, and unsanitary conditions that Diane had ordered staff to hide during official inspections. We had complaints about these restaurants before, he admitted, but never enough evidence to justify a surprise inspection. This changes things. Our final appointment was with the state tax authority. By the time we finished there, laying out evidence of Diane's cash-only payments to undocumented workers, her practice of pocketing cash transactions, and the creative bookkeeping that hid hundreds of thousands in unreported income, it was nearly 700 p.m. "You should be very proud of yourself, Mr. Harrington said as he drove me to my new apartment. "What you did today took immense courage." I stared out the window, a strange emptiness replacing the adrenaline that had carried me through the day. "I don't feel proud. I feel tired." "That's understandable. You've been fighting a silent battle for a very long time." When we reached my apartment building, Dr. Harrington insisted on helping me bring in the few remaining bags I'd stored in his classroom closet. The apartment was tiny, just one room with a kitchenette and a small bathroom, but it was mine. Safe, Diane-free. "Will you be okay?" he asked before leaving. "Do you have everything you need?" I looked around at the second-hand furniture I'd slowly collected. The small fridge already stocked with groceries. The desk where I'd be able to study without interruption. "I'll be fine. Thank you for everything." After he left, I collapsed onto my new bed. Actually, just a mattress on the floor, and finally let myself process what I'd done. There was no going back now. By tomorrow, investigations would be underway. Diane's carefully constructed empire would begin to crumble. I must have fallen asleep because I woke to my phone buzzing incessantly. It was after midnight, and I had 17 missed calls. 10 from the restaurant, 5 from my dad, and 2 from numbers I didn't recognize. I listened to the first voicemail from Diane. "Where the hell are you? We're swamped and short 3 servers. If you're not here in 20 minutes, don't bother coming back at all." The second, also from Diane, was less controlled. "This is completely unacceptable. Your father is worried sick. If this is how you celebrate turning 18, you can find somewhere else to live." I smiled at that one. I already had. The messages from my dad started concerned and ended angry. The final one, left just 30 minutes ago, was slurred. "Your stepmother is furious. Marat, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to come home right now and apologize. We've given you everything, and this is how you repay us by disappearing." I deleted them all without responding, turned off my phone, and went back to sleep in my new home. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows that had no curtains yet. For a moment I felt disoriented, then remembered I was free. I didn't have to serve breakfast to Vanessa or listen to Diane's criticism or pretend my father's indifference didn't hurt. I made myself a simple breakfast, enrolled in summer community college courses using the financial aid I'd secured, and then turned my phone back on to call my mom. "I did it," I told her after explaining everything. I moved out and reported Diane. "Oh, Margot," she sighed, her voice crackling over the international connection. "I'm so sorry. I never should have left you there. I thought your father would take care of you." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "And I'm okay now. Better than okay. I'm flying home next month when my contract ends. We'll figure things out together." "Okay, okay," I agreed, feeling lighter than I had in years. The next week passed in a blur of activity. I started my new job at a different restaurant, one that paid legal wages and didn't expect me to work until midnight. I bought curtains from my windows and a proper pillow from my bed. I successfully avoided my father's increasingly desperate calls. Then, exactly 8 days after my birthday, it happened. The morning news reported that all 5 locations of the Midtown restaurant group had been temporarily shut down pending multiple investigations. The report mentioned serious labor violations, health code infractions, and possible tax evasion. By that afternoon, my phone was exploding with texts from former coworkers. Health inspectors had shown up simultaneously at all 5 restaurants. Labor Department officials had seized records and computers. Tax authorities had frozen business accounts. The leader texted, "They are interviewing everyone, asking about hours and pay." Diane is screaming at managers. Carlos sent they found the second set of books in office safe. Diane tried to run, but they stopped her. I watched it all unfold from a distance, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Not for Diane, never for her, but for the employees who might temporarily lose income while the restaurants were closed. I hadn't considered that consequence, and it weighed on me. But then more texts came in. The Labor Department was already processing emergency unemployment claims for affected workers. Several employees had been offered immunity to testify about the labor practices. Things were happening faster than I'd imagined possible. 3 days later, my father finally found me. I was leaving my new job when he was suddenly there waiting by my car in the parking lot. "Margaret," he said, looking haggarded and years older than when I'd last seen him, "we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, keeping my distance. "Diane's been arrested," he said, his voice hollow. "They are charging her with multiple felonies, tax evasion, wage theft, labor violations. They are saying she could face years in prison." I said nothing. They came to the house with search warrants. They took our computers, our files, even Diane's phone. They interviewed me for hours. He ran a hand through his unwashed hair. "They asked all these questions about you, about how long you worked there, how much you were paid, whether I knew about the conditions." "And what did you tell them?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I said I didn't know that. I thought you were just helping out occasionally." His eyes pleaded with me. "I didn't know, Margaret. I swear I didn't know how bad it was." "You didn't want to know." I corrected him. "There is a difference. Please," he begged. "Come home. We can fix this." "Fix what?" "The fact that you let your wife exploit your daughter. That you sat by while she worked me like a slave and pampered her own daughter. That you forgot my birthday, but threw Vanessa a party with 50 guests." My voice remained calm even as I listed his failures. "Some things can't be fixed, Dad. The house is in Diane's name," he admitted, looking at the ground. "The bank accounts, too. They've frozen everything. I don't have anywhere to go." And there it was. He wasn't here because he missed me or regretted how he treated me. He needed somewhere to stay. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "Maybe Vanessa can help you out." His face crumpled. "Vanessa's staying with her grandparents. They won't let me come. They are blaming me for not protecting Diane from whoever reported her." "From me," I said quietly. "I reported her." He stared at me, comprehension slowly dawning. "Yeah, but why would you?" "Because she broke the law. Multiple laws for years." While he looked the other way, I unlocked my car. "I'd have to go." "Margaret, please. I'm still your father." I paused with my hand on the door handle. "No, you stopped being my father the day you chose Diane and Vanessa over me. You can't just reclaim the title when it's convenient." I got in my car and drove away, watching his diminishing figure in my rear view mirror. I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a profound sadness for what could have been. The story made regional news over the next few weeks. Restaurant chain owner faces 32 felony counts. Wage theft scheme targeted minors and undocumented workers. Tax evasion investigation uncovers years of fraud. Diane's face was on the front page of the local paper, being led into court in handcuffs. She looked nothing like the imperious woman who had tormented me. Her makeup-free face was haggarded, her expensive clothes replaced by a plain suit, her confident smirk gone. The prosecutors contacted me to testify, which I agreed to do. My detailed records became central to their case. Former employees came forward with their own stories, emboldened by the investigation. The carefully constructed house of cards Diane had built was collapsing spectacularly. 3 months after my 18th birthday, I sat in a courtroom and told my story to a judge. I described the exhausting shifts, the missed school, the below minimum wages, the verbal abuse. I explained how my own stepmother had exploited me while living in her home, how my father had enabled it all. Diane didn't look at me once during my testimony. She stared straight ahead, her attorney occasionally whispering to her. My father sat in the back of the courtroom looking broken. The judge asked me, "Why did you continue to work under these conditions for so long?" At first, because I had nowhere else to go. I explained later because I needed to document everything properly. I wanted justice, not just for myself, but for everyone she'd exploited. When the proceedings ended that day, a woman approached me outside the courtroom. She introduced herself as a reporter for a national news outlet. "Your story is remarkable," she said. Would you consider an interview? People need to hear about wage theft and how it affects young workers. I hesitated, then agreed. The interview led to others. Suddenly, I was being asked to speak at schools about labor rights. A nonprofit that helped exploited workers offered me a part-time position doing outreach. 6 months after my birthday, Diane accepted a plea deal to avoid a full trial. She would serve 18 months in prison, pay substantial fines and back wages to all affected employees, and be prohibited from owning or managing any business for 10 years after her release. The restitution payments to employees were life-changing for many. Elena used hers to finally get dental work she'd been putting off for years. Carlos put a down payment on a small house, and I received the largest settlement, nearly 2 years of unpaid wages, overtime, and additional damages, which paid for my entire community college degree. My father tried to reconcile several times. He left voicemails saying he divorced Diane, that he was in therapy, that he wanted to make amends. I listened to them all, but wasn't ready to respond. Some wounds take more than apologies to heal. Vanessa surprisingly reached out, too. We met for coffee one rainy afternoon, nearly a year after everything happened. I didn't know, she said, stirring her latte nervously, about how Mom was treating you at work. I mean, I knew she was harder on you than me, but not about the illegal stuff. Would it have mattered if you did know? I asked. She looked away. Probably not, then. I was pretty spoiled. The grandparents aren't as generous as Mom was, she said with a wry smile. I've actually got a job now, retail. It's humbling. We weren't going to be friends, Vanessa and I, but there was a new understanding between us. We were both casualties of Diane's narcissism in different ways. Today, I'm 19 and halfway through my business degree. I still work part-time at the labor rights nonprofit, helping young people understand their workplace rights. I have my own apartment, small but all mine, and my mom visits regularly when she's in the country. The restaurant chain was eventually sold to new owners who reopened 3 of the 5 locations with better practices and higher wages. Many of the original staff returned. Sometimes I drive past the one where I spent so many exhausting hours and feel a complex mix of emotions. Pride at what I accomplished, sadness for the girl I was, determination that others won't suffer the same way. My story isn't just about revenge, though that's certainly part of it. It's about justice. It's about standing up for yourself when no one else will. It's about documenting the truth when others try to bury it. If you're watching this and you're in a situation where you're being exploited, whether by family, an employer, or anyone else, please know that you have rights. You deserve better, and there are people who will help you if you reach out. I never expected my story to reach so many people, but I'm grateful it has. If it helps even one person recognize their own worth and stand up for themselves, then everything I went through was worth it. If you stayed with me until the end of this video, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means more than you know to be heard after staying silent for so long. If my story resonated with you in any way, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your comments especially mean the world to me. I read every single one, and knowing that my experience has touched others helps heal the parts of me that are still mending. Share your own stories if you feel comfortable. We get stronger when we know we are not alone. I invite you to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and support me further by hitting the like button so the story in this video can be heard by many more people. Thanks to all.